Hi, I'm Mike, WU2D. I have an active YouTube channel you might be familiar with already, Microwave One. I brought three pieces here that were kind of central to some of the videos that I've done on YouTube. The first one is a homemade citizens band transceiver. Back in the day, it was actually legal to build your own CB. It is no longer legal to do that. But in the early 60s, they actually had magazine articles on how to build your own CB. This radio came from a ham fest, the Hamvention down in Massachusetts last year. And it had these funny call letters on the front, 1W1233. And those are indeed primitive CB call letters from the late 50s, early 60s. So I tackled this thing not knowing what it was. It was a mystery item, and that was kind of the bent of the videos. Alien transceiver shows up. What is it? And of course, there was a lot of feedback and a lot of comments. But it turned out to be a functional device. It puts out about 1 watt, and it has a super regenerative receiver for 11 meters. Can you imagine? But who would go to the trouble of building their own CB today? Isn't it amazing? So that would be about 1960 vintage. This item over here is the subject of another video. And the question is, how did Grandpa know how to stay in the band? How did he know what frequency he was on when there was no heterodyne, there was no crystal standards, there was no way to tell. You just had this breadboard with a big coil, and you were trying to transmit and stay in the band. And the answer was by using something called a frequency monitor or a station monitor. And this is a 1931 out of the ARRL handbook station monitor. It's a single active device. It uses the state-of-the-art 24A tetrode, which was a brand new tube that actually had 2 grids in it. And this device would allow you to not only hear your side tone when you're sending code, but it put out a pip that you could pick up in your regenerative receiver. Because if you've ever listened to a regenerative receiver, when you transmit, what happens? It blocks it. You can't hear it. But with this device, you not only could get your transmitter on frequency, but more importantly, you could get your receiver on frequency with one tube. It's called the heterodyne principle. In one case, the heterodyne is against your transmitter and it produces a beat note, and you zero that. In the other case, it's a little oscillator that you can pick up in the regenerative receiver, and now you've just put your 2 items, your transmitter and your receiver, on the same frequency. Now, how did you know what frequency you were on? Well, at that time, they had what was called ham radio frequency service stations. So your job might be to put out a 3,500 kilohertz signal on Tuesday night. And everybody around would tune their frequency to 3,500. Okay, next week you're going to be at 3,510, and so on. And these hams were actually given crystals, which were a brand new thing in 1929, 1930, to actually have crystal control. Crystals were costing upwards of $150 of our money today. And would you pay $150 for a crystal, or would you pay $15 for a synthesized signal generator off Amazon? Okay, so this was a lot for hams. So they passed around the crystals so everyone would be able to know what frequency they were on. And by 1935, everybody had their equipment kind of trained, and then crystals did come in, and people were using crystals pretty well through World War II. And we didn't go to VFOs until they finally let the novices, I think, have VFOs in 73, maybe? Around 73? Yeah. So I was using a command set, and I could tune my command set, my ARC-V, and I was totally legal. The last item I wanted to show you was a novice receiver. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, it was very common to have your Elmer build something with you. It was also common to have a paper route and save up enough money to buy an S-38 Helicrafters, or a Space Spanner, or a Star Roamer, or an S-120. And those receivers were absolutely horrible on the bands. You know, getting the BFO to work at all was terrible. So this was the answer to that. And somebody came up with this in 1958, and it stayed in the handbook through 1965. It's called the SimpleX Super Novice Receiver. 3 tubes. And with 3 tubes, this could outperform those 4 and 5 tube $100 type receivers that people were trying to use on the ham bands. So if you have any questions about this stuff, I'll be available after the presentation. Thanks.